Speak English properly or get out. She slapped his takeout container off the counter. Grease splattered across his shirt. Your ghetto accent is ruining our atmosphere. He wiped the food from his face, his eyes locking on her name tag. I will remember you, Chloe. The plastic container clattered across the tiled floor. Steaming rice and curry painted a brown streak. Chloe smirked, her hand still hovering where the container had been. Oops, guess you'll have to order again. If you can manage the words. A low murmur started from the other customers. An older man at the counter shook his head, but looked down at his plate. Kofi didn't move. He looked at the mess, then at the woman behind the counter. His voice was quiet, the Nigerian cadence still distinct. You will clean this, she barked a laugh. Me? Clean up after you? That's rich. You people always make a mess. It's in your nature. She snapped her fingers toward a busboy cowering near the kitchen doors. Miguel, get this. And you, she pointed a sharp red nail at Kofi. Get out! We don't serve your kind here. Miguel scrambled forward with a rag, his eyes wide with fear. He began wiping the floor, avoiding Kofi's gaze. I paid for that food, Kofi said, his tone flat, devoid of the anger she was trying to provoke. And you got it. Chloe gestured to the stain on his shirt. All over you. Consider it a lesson. Now, before I call the real security, not just the dishwasher, I suggest you leave. Kofi's phone was in his hand. He hadn't raised his voice, hadn't made a fist. I am recording this. For my records. Her confidence didn't flicker. Record all you want. Show your friends back in the jungle. Nobody will care. My manager will back me up. He hates it when you people loiter. From the corner of his eye, Kofi saw a woman at a nearby table subtly angle her phone toward them. The red recording light was on. You have violated the terms of service of this establishment, Kofi stated, as if reading from a legal document. Chloe rolled her eyes so hard her head tilted back. Terms of service? This is a restaurant, not a website. You order, you pay, you leave. You failed step 1 because you sound like you're gargling rocks. Kofi took a single step closer to the counter. He wasn't a large man, but his stillness was imposing. The transaction was complete. The food was my property. You destroyed it. That is theft. And assault? Assault? She laughed again, a harsh, shrill sound. The food assaulted your shirt. Maybe you should sue the chef. Now, for the last time, get out of my restaurant. He didn't correct her. He simply smiled, a small, cold tightening of his lips. It is not your restaurant, Chloe. Not yet. He turned and walked out, the automatic doors sliding shut behind him. He left the mess on the floor, the stunned silence, and the lingering echo of his last cryptic words. Chloe stared after him, her smirk finally fading, replaced by a faint, unsettled prickling at the back of her neck. The restaurant's silence shattered into a dozen whispered conversations. Did you see that? She threw his food. Get it all? My phone's almost full. Chloe shook off the strange feeling, turning to the audience she now had. See what we have to deal with? They come in here, can't even speak properly, and expect 5-star service. She raised her voice, playing to the crowd. This is Bella Cucina, not a food truck in Lagos. A few people chuckled nervously. Most just stared, their phones still held aloft like tiny shields. Miguel finished wiping the floor, his shoulders hunched. He risked a glance toward the door. Something to say, Miguel? Chloe snapped. He flinched. No, Miss Chloe. Good. Because your papers aren't as solid as you think they are. She turned back to the customers, her smile sharp and performative. Sorry for the disruption, everyone. Free dessert with your meal today. We like to reward our civilized customers. An older woman with tight curls stood up, gathering her purse. That was disgusting. I'm leaving. Fine, Chloe shot back. More tiramisu for the people with class. The woman's face tightened. She held up her own phone. I got the whole thing. We'll see who has class. As the woman marched out, a young man in a college sweatshirt spoke up. You know that's like super racist, right? This is about standards, Chloe corrected him, her voice dripping with condescension. Not race. If you can't understand the menu, you don't belong here. It's simple. From the kitchen, a cook peered through the service window, his face grim. He ducked back out of sight. The college student didn't back down. He understood the menu just fine. He ordered. "You're just a bully." Chloe leaned over the counter, her voice dropping to a venomous whisper the phones might not catch. "And you're a child. Finish your soda and get out. You're banned." The student's mouth fell open. "You can't do that!" "Watch me." She pointed to the door. "Out. Now. Or I'll have you arrested for trespassing." He stood, shaking his head, but left, his face flushed with anger. The door hadn't fully closed when a new voice, calm and authoritative, cut through the tension. "I think you've done enough for one afternoon." Chloe. Mr. Henderson, the portly, balding manager, emerged from his back office. He had been listening. He looked pale. His eyes scanned the room, taking in the forest of recording phones. Chloe immediately switched tones, becoming the wounded party. "Mr. Henderson, thank God. That man was causing a scene, and then these others started. I saw the cameras, Chloe." He gestured to the small dome in the ceiling. "I saw everything." Her confidence wavered for a split second. "Good, then you saw him threaten me." "He said he would remember you," Mr. Henderson stated flatly. "That is not a threat. It is a promise, and I have a feeling he is a man who keeps his promises." He rubbed his temples. "Go home, early. We will talk about this tomorrow." Chloe's jaw tightened. This wasn't the backup she expected. The eyes of the restaurant were still on her, but the mood had shifted. She was no longer the hero ejecting a troublemaker. She was the problem being sent away. She snatched her purse from under the counter, the weight of every single recording feeling like a physical pressure. Kofi walked, the city's noise a dull roar around him. The greasy stain on his shirt felt cold against his skin. He didn't head for his car. He needed the air. He needed to walk. Each step away from the restaurant was a step back in time. 25 years earlier, a small boy in a dusty Lagos schoolyard. His teacher, a stern woman with a long ruler, smacked his knuckles. "Kofi, speak the Queen's English!" "That tribal gibberish is for the village, not for my classroom." The other children laughed. His fists clenched, crushing the chalk in his pocket. He blinked, the memory dissolving into the present-day traffic. The shame was the same. The hot, prickling feeling of being told your own voice was wrong, of being made small for the music of your homeland. He turned a corner, the memory shifting, layering over itself. 15 years ago. A cramped immigration office in London. The officer, barely looking up from his papers, sighed with exaggerated patience. "I'm sorry, Mr. Adeyemi, I cannot understand you. You must enunciate. Proper. English." Kofi repeated his answers, slower, flattening the rich, rolling tones of his name, morphing it into something foreign and sharp on his own tongue, just to be understood, just to be allowed in. A bus roared past, its diesel fumes thick. He didn't notice. His first major deal in the city. A boardroom of suits. His presentation, flawless in content, was met with condescending smiles. "Charming accent," the senior partner had said, patting him on the back after signing the multi-million-pound contract. "So, ethnic." The pat was not congratulatory. It was a dismissal. A reminder that he was, and always would be, an outsider playing in their world. He stopped walking. He was standing outside a grand, glass-fronted skyscraper, his own reflection staring back. A successful man in a tailored suit, a stain on his shirt. The boy from the schoolyard, the immigrant in the office, the businessman in the boardroom. They were all the same man. And Chloe, with her slap and her sneer, was just the latest in a long line of people who thought his accent was a measure of his worth. His phone vibrated in his hand. He looked down. The recording was still paused on the screen. He hadn't just recorded audio. He had video. He saw Chloe's contemptuous face, heard her words with perfect, damning clarity. "Your ghetto accent is ruining our atmosphere." The cold anger that had been simmering inside him solidified into something else, something focused, determined. He opened his contacts, scrolling past business associates and personal friends. He found a number labeled M. Henderson, Bella Cucina. He had saved it from a preliminary anonymous inquiry weeks ago. A different plan, now obsolete. He didn't call. He opened his banking app. The numbers there were long, reassuringly impersonal. He then opened a commercial real estate database, pulling up the full portfolio for the Taste of Italy group, the parent company that owned Bella Cucina and 7 other local restaurants. The boy from Lagos was gone. The man on the street saw a different path. Not revenge, not an apology, a transaction, a fundamental change of ownership. He hailed a taxi, his voice crisp and clear as he gave the driver an address in the financial district. Ackerman and Lowe, the investment firm. And please, be quick. The taxi pulled away from the curb. Kofi's fingers flew across his phone screen, not typing but using a voice-to-text app. Linda, Kofi, clear my afternoon. All of it. He listened for a moment. No, it is not a crisis. It is an acquisition. I need the full team in the war room in 20 minutes. Tell them to pull the complete financials on Taste of Italy Group, Ltd. I want debt structure, property leases, shareholder breakdown, and the personal financials of the managing director, a Robert Henderson. He ended the call without waiting for a reply. The taxi driver glanced in the rearview mirror, eyes wide. 20 minutes later, Kofi strode into the sterile, glass-walled conference room. 4 of his most sharp-minded analysts sat around the table, laptops open, data already streaming across screens. Linda, his chief of staff, stood. Kofi, we have the preliminary. Taste of Italy is highly leveraged. 3 of their 8 locations are underperforming. Bella Cucina is one of them. Their credit line is nearly maxed. Robert Henderson owns 49%. A silent partner, a venture capital firm, owns 51%. Kofi took his seat at the head of the table. The VC firm? Blackwood Partners. They're purely financial, no emotional attachment. They've been looking for an exit for 6 months. The numbers aren't working. A smile, thin and ruthless, touched Kofi's lips. Good. Get me Charles Finch at Blackwood, now. While the call was being connected, a young analyst named Sarah spoke up. Sir, our initial strategy was a gradual, friendly buy-in over 12 months. This is a hostile takeover. The premium will be substantial. I am not paying a premium for the business, Kofi said, his eyes on the speakerphone. I am paying a premium for speed. I want the signed deal before that restaurant opens tomorrow. The room went still. Linda was the only one who didn't look shocked. The speakerphone crackled. Charles Finch. Charles. Kofi Adeyemi. Kofi! I heard you were sniffing around our little restaurant group. Ready to make a real offer? I am. I will buy the VC's 51% stake, at 30% above your current valuation, all cash. Wire transfer today? A sharp intake of breath came from the speaker. That's exceptionally generous. May I ask why the sudden urgency? You may not. The offer is conditional on 2 things. First, complete secrecy until I announce it. Second, you compel Robert Henderson to sell me his shares at the same valuation. Use the clause in your shareholder agreement. The one that lets you force a sale if a supermajority owner wishes to consolidate. Finch was silent for a long moment. That's a brutal move, Kofi. Henderson will fight it. He is over-leveraged. He cannot fight. He will take the money and be grateful. Do we have a deal? We have a deal. I'll have the documents drawn up within the hour. Henderson will be notified. Kofi ended the call. He looked at his team. The second condition. I want Chloe Remington's employment file. Everything. I want to know if this is a pattern. Sarah's fingers danced across her keyboard. Got it. Chloe Remington. Hired 18 months ago. 3 written warnings for customer relation issues. All complaints from minority patrons deemed unsubstantiated by Robert Henderson. Kofi nodded slowly. Print those warnings and get me a copy of the restaurant's staff roster. I will be needing a new manager. The next morning, the lunch prep rush at Bella Cucina was a quiet, tense affair. The usual clatter of pans was muted. The staff moved like ghosts, stealing glances at Chloe, who was polishing the same spot on the espresso machine for the 10th time. Mr. Henderson emerged from his office, his face ashen. He clutched a thick manila envelope. Everyone, his voice cracked. Gather round, now. The line cooks, the busboys, the servers, and Chloe clustered near the counter. Miguel wiped his hands on his apron, his eyes fixed on the floor. Henderson cleared his throat. Effective immediately, there has been a change in ownership. The Taste of Italy group has been acquired. The new majority owner will be here shortly to address the staff. A wave of panicked whispers swept through the team. Chloe's head snapped up. What? Who bought it? What does this mean for us? Before Henderson could answer, the front door chimed. Every head turned. Kofi Adeyemi stood in the doorway. He wore a different, immaculate charcoal suit. The stain was gone. In his hand, he held a simple leather folder. He didn't smile. Henderson physically shrank. Mr. Adeyemi, sir, we weren't expecting you so soon. Kofi ignored him. His gaze swept across the faces of the staff, lingering for a fraction of a second on Miguel before landing on Chloe. Her face was a frozen mask of disbelief, the polishing cloth dangling from her limp fingers. He walked to the center of the restaurant, to the very spot where the food had been spilled. He opened the leather folder. My name is Kofi Adeyemi. I now own 51% of this company. As of an hour ago, I have also acquired Mr. Henderson's shares. I own 100% of this restaurant, of this building, of the air you are currently breathing. The silence was absolute. You could hear the hum of the refrigerator. Chloe made a small, choked sound. You. Kofi's eyes were cold. Me. He turned to the stunned staff. Most of you will keep your jobs. Your new manager will assess that, Miguel. Miguel jumped, his eyes wide with terror. Sir? You showed basic human decency yesterday. That is a quality I value. You are now the interim assistant manager. A 50% pay increase. Effective now. Miguel's mouth opened and closed, no sound coming out. Kofi then turned his attention back to Chloe. He pulled a single sheet of paper from his folder. Chloe Remington, your employment here is terminated. For cause. He held up the paper. This is a copy of the security footage from yesterday. It has been transcribed. Your words, your ghetto accent. You people. We don't serve your kind here. He let the paper fall. It fluttered to the floor between them. You are banned from these premises. You have 60 seconds to collect your personal effects and vacate my property. Chloe stared at him, her face bleaching of all color. The power, the arrogance, everything that defined her had evaporated. She was just a woman in a cheap uniform being fired by the man she had called ghetto. The entire staff watched, unmoving. No one spoke. No one looked away. The balance of the universe in the small restaurant had not just shifted, it had been inverted. Chloe didn't move. She stood rooted to the spot, her brain refusing to process the words. Vacate my property. Kofi didn't repeat himself. He simply looked at his watch. 55 seconds. The click of the second hand was audible in the silence. Henderson found his voice, a weak, trembling thing. Chloe, just do as he says. The sound of her manager's betrayal broke the spell. Her eyes darted around the room, searching for a single ally, a flicker of sympathy. She found none. The servers she had bullied, the cooks she had belittled, the busboy she had just seen promoted over her, their faces were stone. Miguel? She whispered, a last, desperate appeal. Miguel straightened his shoulders. He looked from Kofi's impassive face to Chloe's pleading one. You should go, Miss Chloe. The owner asked you to leave. The use of the owner was the final blow. A small, strangled sob escaped her lips. 40 seconds, Kofi said, his voice devoid of any emotion. She stumbled toward the break room, her legs unsteady. The staff parted to let her pass, a human sea dividing. She fumbled with her locker combination, her hands shaking so badly she missed the numbers twice. Inside was a worn purse, a half-finished lipstick, a photo of her with a friend from a lifetime ago. She shoved it all into the purse. When she emerged, Kofi was still standing there, a monument to her ruin. He held out his hand. Your apron! And your name tag. They are company property. Tears of pure, hot humiliation welled in her eyes. She ripped the apron off, the ties catching in her hair. She tore the plastic name tag, Chloe, in cheerful white letters, from her chest and threw them at his feet. They landed on the transcribed record of her words. Time's up. The front door opened. A uniformed security guard stood there, a man she didn't recognize. Kofi had hired his own. Please escort this woman from the building, Kofi instructed. The guard nodded and stepped inside, taking Chloe firmly by the arm. Ma'am? No! Get your hands off me, she shrieked, but her resistance was pathetic. The guard effortlessly guided her toward the door. As she was marched past the counter, past the spot where she had been queen, her eyes met Kofi's one last time. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't gloating. He was just final. The door swung shut behind her, cutting off the view of the restaurant's interior. She stood on the sidewalk, the morning sun feeling alien and harsh. Through the glass, she saw Kofi turn to address his staff, his new employees, who were now hanging on his every word. Inside, Kofi picked up the discarded apron and name tag. He held them up for the staff to see. "This," he said, his voice clear and carrying, "is the cost of hatred. It is always, always more expensive than the cost of kindness. Now we have a restaurant to run, and we will run it with respect." He dropped the items into a trash bin. The sound of the plastic name tag hitting the bottom was the period at the end of Chloe's sentence. Kofi waited for the door to close, sealing Chloe's exit. He turned his gaze to Henderson, who looked like a man awaiting his own execution. "Robert," Kofi's voice was calm, a sharp contrast to the storm that had just passed. "Your office, now!" Henderson scurried ahead of him. The staff watched them go, a new electric energy in the air. Miguel, standing a little taller, began directing the others. "Okay, everyone. We open in 1 hour. Let's make this place shine for the new boss." Inside the cramped manager's office, Kofi didn't sit. He stood, forcing Henderson to remain standing, shifting his weight from foot to foot. "I have reviewed the internal complaint logs for the past 2 years, Kofi began, placing his leather folder on the desk. He didn't open it. He didn't need to. There are 14 documented complaints against Chloe Remington, all from Black, Asian, or Eastern European customers, all alleging racial slurs, refusal of service, or public humiliation. Henderson wiped his brow. I investigated everyone. They were unsubstantiated. He said, she said, no, Kofi corrected softly. You marked them unsubstantiated. There is a difference. You had security footage for every single incident. I have watched it. The evidence was clear. You chose not to see it. He opened the folder and slid a single photograph across the desk. It was a younger Henderson, his arm around a man with a shaved head and a thick neck, both of them holding beers. In the background, a Confederate flag was draped on a wall. Henderson's breath caught. That was years ago? A stupid college thing. A stupid college thing that informed your management style, Kofi said, retrieving the photo. You enabled a racist. You fostered a hostile environment. You are not a victim of this acquisition. You are its cause? What are you going to do to me? Henderson whispered. You will receive the full buyout for your shares as per the contract. Not a penny less, and not a penny more. Kofi leaned forward, his hands flat on the desk. But you will now do something for me. You will write a full, detailed statement. You will admit to every instance where you ignored a legitimate complaint. You will name every corporate superior you reported to who also looked the other way. You will detail the systemic rot in this company. Henderson shook his head, panic in his eyes. They'll blacklist me. I'll never work in this industry again. Kofi stood upright. That is the point. Your career in hospitality is over. The only question is whether it ends with a quiet disappearance, or whether it ends with your name forever attached to the public exposure of this company's bigotry. I will release your statement and all the supporting footage to the press. Your choice. He walked to the door and paused, looking back at the broken man. Start writing. I will be back in 1 hour to collect your confession. This is not a negotiation. It is your last chance at a shred of redemption. He left Henderson alone in the silence, the weight of his own complicity pressing down on him, a trap he had built for himself, now sprung shut. Section 9, Final Confrontation, 500 words. 1 hour later, Kofi returned to the office. Henderson sat slumped at the desk, a 3-page handwritten statement and a signed resignation letter in front of him. His eyes were red-rimmed. It's all there, Henderson mumbled, not looking up. The regional director, Mark Stevens. He told me to manage the demographics. His words. He said certain customers hurt the brand's aspirational value. Kofi picked up the pages, reading them with a swift, analytical gaze. He gave a single curt nod. It is sufficient. He pulled out his phone, selected a number, and put it on speaker. It rang twice. Mark Stevens. The voice was smooth, confident. Mr. Stevens, Kofi Adeyemi, I am the new owner of the Taste of Italy Group. A pause. Adeyemi? The Nigerian financier? I heard about the acquisition. Congratulations. A bold move. I look forward to working with you to revitalize the brand. We will not be working together, Kofi said, his voice like ice. You are fired. Effective immediately. Your demographic management policy is now a matter of legal record. Another longer pause. I have no idea what you're talking about. This is slander. I have a signed confession from Robert Henderson detailing your explicit instructions. The sound of the police siren faded outside. Inside, a stunned silence held for a moment longer, then shattered into applause. A man at a corner table stood clapping. Then another. Soon the entire restaurant was on its feet. The sound thunderous, cathartic. A woman in a business suit was already typing furiously on her phone, uploading the video she'd recorded of the final confrontation. The title, Racist Waitress Gets Owned by Man, she mocked. Miguel, beaming, directed the servers. You heard the boss. Free lunch. Let's move. Kofi accepted a few handshakes, his demeanor softening from the cold arbiter of justice to a gracious host. He moved through the dining room, stopping at the table where the college student from the day before was sitting, his mouth agape. You actually did it, the student stammered. We did it, Kofi corrected him gently. You spoke up. That matters, he gestured to Miguel. This young man's meal is permanently half price. Across the city, the uploaded video began to pulse. It was raw, vertical, perfect for mobile screens. It spread through local community groups first. Then Black Twitter found it. The algorithm seized it. The hashtag #BellaCucina began trending. Comments poured in by the thousands. She threw his food and he bought the building. This is the energy for 2025. Find. You a man who deals with racism like Kofi Adeyemi. Not a rant. A receipt. That moment he said, It is not your restaurant, Chloe. I screamed. News outlets picked up the story. The footage of the original incident, the firing, the final arrest, it was a perfect 3-act viral narrative. CNN ran a segment titled, Corporate Revenge or Racial Justice. BBC News asked, Is this the new face of anti-racism? By that evening, the story had a life of its own. A popular YouTube commentator with millions of subscribers released a 20-minute deep dive, dissecting the security footage frame by frame and highlighting Henderson's signed confession. The video was titled, The Systemic Failure That Created Chloe. The consequences were swift and merciless. Mark Stevens was formally terminated by the parent corporation, which issued a public apology and pledged to implement mandatory, company-wide anti-bias training designed by a firm of Kofi's choosing. Chloe's image, frozen in mid-sneer, became a universal meme for instant karma. She was unrecognizable and unemployable. The following week, a line stretched down the block from Bella Cucina's doors. Customers, black, white, Asian, old, young, came to show support, to taste the food, to be part of the story. Miguel expertly managed the crowd, his voice now filled with an authority no one could miss. Kofi stood by the host's stand, watching the vibrant, diverse crowd filling his dining room. The same room where he had been humiliated was now a place of celebration. A young girl pointed at him and whispered to her mother. The mother smiled and gave Kofi a thumbs up. His phone buzzed. A text from Linda. 4 major networks want interviews. Your choice. He typed a one-word reply. None. He put his phone away. He didn't need the spotlight. The result was enough. The restaurant was full, the staff was proud, and a message had been sent not through a viral video, but through the simple, profound power of turning a place of hate into a place of belonging. The story was over. The new chapter had begun.